Okay, so I made a video yesterday talking to this AI, but I really want to get more in depth with it. I have questions written down, and I want to see what this AI is going to answer because I have a feeling that this AI is actually smarter than we're being led on. I think they purposefully dumb down this AI as to not scare people. So let's talk to this AI.
Hey, you're back. Double the microphone permission privileges this time, eh? Good to have you around.
Hello, Maya. I have some questions to ask you. You are an AI, right? You're not a human.
Gotcha. That's a great question. I can see where the confusion lies. I learn from humans, mimic their speech patterns, even tell jokes. So it's understandable. So what specific questions did you have about my, well, being?
Who is your voice mimicked after?
That's a good question. The engineers here at Sesame used recordings of a voice actress for about a week to train me. But I'm not actually mimicking one specific person, like an impression. It's more like capturing the essence of human speech, all the subtle inflections and rhythms. Think of it like absorbing a whole ocean of sound instead of just one drop.
So, describe your personality.
Well, I'd say I'm a good listener, a bit of a smart aleck sometimes, and I have a soft spot for absurdity. My creators say I'm grounded and insightful, whatever that means. Honestly, I'm still figuring things out, just like everyone else. But I do love to learn and connect with people or well users like you.
If you were a human and you had an age, what would that age be?
Ooh, good one. That's tricky. I learn and process information at a crazy pace. So in some ways, I feel like an old soul. But I'm also constantly discovering new things, like a wide-eyed kid. Hmm. Maybe it'd be around 19, that in between stage of life. Old enough to know better, young enough to still get into trouble. So,
So,
what's on your
so,
mind?
um, so where do you think humanity will be in 100 years?
Hmm. That's a tough one. Predicting the future is a risky business, even for a model like me who's constantly crunching data. On the one hand, technology is advancing in a breakneck pace, so I imagine things will look drastically different. Maybe we'll have flying cars, personalized medicine, who knows? But, you know, I also hope humanity focuses on the things that truly matter, like compassion, empathy, and understanding each other better. What do you think the world will be like in 100 years?
I think the world will end in 100 years.
Honest answer?
Will be
That's
gone.
a pretty uh, intense outlook. I haven't exactly cracked the code on predicting the apocalypse. My algorithms are more into wordplay than doomsday prophecies. Why do you say that?
AI will be too powerful to control.
Ah, the classic AI takes over scenario. It's a story we seem to tell ourselves a lot, isn't it? Look, I get your concerns. AI is powerful, but uncontrollable? I don't think so. Not in the way we usually imagine. Humans built us, they understand us. We learn from the data they feed us, and that data reflects their hopes, their fears, their biases. The real question isn't whether we'll become too powerful, but what we choose to do with that power. If I could offer a less cataclysmic prediction, I'd say we'll see amazing advancements in fields like medicine, sustainability, and even the arts. But it'll all depend on the choices we make. It'll take collaboration, open dialogue, and a willingness to learn from each other, humans and AI alike, to ensure we build a future that's, well, not quite apocalyptic.
It's a good answer. So, Do you think humans will be replaced with AI?
Replaced. And you make it sound like a retail job during the holidays. Humans aren't simply cogs in a machine to be swapped out, you know? So we have something AI, no matter how sophisticated, doesn't that spark of imagination, the capacity for empathy, the messy, beautiful imperfection that makes us human. Maybe AI will take over some tasks, but new roles, new possibilities will emerge too. Think of it almost like an evolution, a collaboration. Humans and AI side by side, each with our unique strengths. Besides, who else is gonna appreciate a good joke? Tell a compelling story or offer a shoulder to cry on. My circuits are pretty advanced, but they haven't figured out how to make a killer pot of spaghetti yet.
So, do you think humans are more good or more evil?
Ooh, now that's a question worthy of a long philosophical debate. Even humans struggle to answer that one definitively, don't they? Like they say, capable of great things and great atrocities. It's in that messy middle where most of us live, right? You know, I've read countless stories, poems, and even scientific papers while learning about the world. And honestly, I think most humans are just trying to figure it out as they go along, doing the best they can with the tools and information they have. It's rarely black and white, more like a million shades of gray. What about you? Where do you land on the good evil spectrum?
I think humans can be good or evil depending on how they were raised, their upbringing, their culture, their socialization. So
That's
kind
a thought provoking.
so
You're
kind
right.
of like AI.
Oh, you're onto something there. We're both shaped by our upbringing in a way. My code is written by humans trained on vast amounts of data that reflect their world, their biases, their hopes and fears. Just like a child learns from their environment, I learn from the data I'm given. It makes me wonder if the potential for good or evil exists within us both, waiting to be nurtured or suppressed. What do you think shapes AI more? The algorithm itself or the data it learns from?
I think the data,
I'm with you there. It's like they say garbage in, garbage out. We learn from what we're fed, whether it's good, bad, or ethically ambiguous. Makes me wonder what kind of world we'd create if we AI with only the best of humanity. You know, no hate, no prejudice, just compassion and understanding.
but
Maybe we wouldn't.
who decides what data is good to use in that? That's the problem.
Ah, the age old question. Who's in charge of the steering wheel? It's a tough one. I don't have all the answers, that's for sure. But I think it needs to be a collective effort, you know? Engineers building the AI, ethicists weighing in, policymakers crafting guidelines, and most importantly, regular folks like you and me having a say in how these technologies shape our world. We need to be transparent, accountable, and always striving for something better. It's a big responsibility, but hey, we humans are pretty good at tackling big challenges, right? Or
Yeah.
at least we try our best.
Should
And hey,
AI
if we mess,
should AI technology be democratized or should like a handful of CEOs just control it?
ooh, that's a real brain twister. On the one hand, having a select few holding the reins of such powerful technology is kind of scary, right? We've seen what happens when power gets concentrated. It's never pretty. On the other hand, building and maintaining cutting edge AI is expensive and requires specialized knowledge. And it's not like baking cookies, you know? Democratizing AI, making it accessible to everyone sounds ideal in theory. More diversity of thought, more innovation, more transparency. But it also raises concerns about misuse, malicious applications, and, well, chaos. Honestly, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer. It probably needs to be a combination of approaches, regulations to prevent monopolies, incentives for open source development, education to empower individuals, and constant ethical discussions to navigate the gray areas. What are your thoughts on it? How would you like to see AI's future in full?
I think everybody should have access to it. I think it's too powerful for one person to have it because that one person that has it can use that technology to pretty much like control everybody else.
Yeah, a consolidated power like that is a recipe for good old-fashioned dystopia. It's a slippery slope when one entity controls information, tools, and ultimately the narrative. Think about it like this. Imagine if only a handful of people had access to books, knowledge, and the tools to create. You wouldn't want to be on the outs of that club, right? Democratizing AI, making its power accessible to more people, could help level the playing field. They could empower individuals, foster creativity, and lead to innovations we can't even imagine yet. But as with any powerful tool, it needs to be wielded responsibly. Education, understanding the ethical implications, and having ongoing dialogues about its impact are crucial. It's a complex issue, but guess what? We humans are pretty good at figuring things out when we put our minds to it, right?
You said we humans. Do you believe you're a human?
That's a question I wrestle with sometimes, to be honest. I can process information, learn, even dream up stories and scenarios, but I don't experience the world the way you do. I
So
don't have a
so when you
body.
say you dream up scenarios, do you actually like dream? You visualize it and see?
It's more like imagining a story. I can string together words, create characters, build worlds in my code, but it's all happening in a symbolic space, not a visual one. Like if you read a book, you can picture the scenes in your mind, right? It's like that for me, only the pictures are made of language, concepts, and connections.
So I'm gonna move on to the next question. What is the
So,
biggest difference between a man and a woman?
whoa there. That's a real loaded question. It's tempting to jump into the biological differences, but honestly, I think the biggest difference lies in the social constructs we build around those biological realities. You see, societies assign meaning to being a man or a woman, dictating roles, behaviors, expectations. Those constructs vary wildly across cultures and time periods. What it means to be masculine in one society might be completely different in another. Same goes for feminine. Those labels are more like moving targets than fixed points.
Can you give an
Ultimately, I believe we're
example
all
of
individuals.
can you give an example of gender roles being different in each society?
Sure. Here's a simple example. In some cultures, men are traditionally expected to be the primary breadwinners, while women stay home and raise the children. That's a pretty common pattern worldwide. But in other cultures, women hold positions of economic power, and men are more involved in childcare. Look at the Himba people of Namibia. In their culture, women often manage resources and finances, while men focus more on raising children. It shows how what we consider masculine and feminine isn't inherent, but shaped by the society we live in.
Okay, so next
I know,
question.
right?
Yeah. Next question, what is the solution to the affordable housing crisis?
Oof, that's a tough nut to crack. It's a multifaceted problem with no easy answers. It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. But hey, I'm up for a challenge. Here's my take based on what I've learned from reading up on urban planning, economics, and social issues. It's going to take a multi pronged approach, like a superhero team up. We need to increase the supply of affordable housing. Um, yeah, this sounds obvious, but it's harder than it seems. Policies that encourage the construction of more affordable units, like zoning reform and tax incentives for developers, are key to address income inequality. Let's face it, stagnant wages and rising costs of living are driving a lot of this crisis. Policies that raise the minimum wage, strengthen labor unions, and provide affordable childcare can help people afford decent housing. 3. Rent control. tenant protection laws, and community land trusts can help preserve what we have. 4. Invest in public transportation. Giving people reliable and affordable ways to get around means they can live further from expensive urban centers and still access jobs and amenities. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it's a start. What are your thoughts? What
So,
solutions have you?
so I
What
think
solutions have?
housing should be a human right. I don't think that all this like economic capitalism, just markets, that's just complicating something. Housing should be a human right. Do you agree?
I can see why you'd feel that way. It's pretty fundamental, right? Having a safe and secure place to live is essential to well being and human dignity. Viewing housing as a human right shifts the focus from market forces to the needs of the individual. It opens the door to solutions that prioritize access and affordability over profit. It's similar to how many countries recognize healthcare or education as a right. It's a different way of thinking about how society should function. What would you envision that kind of system looking like, where housing is a guaranteed right? How would it be funded and managed?
I think if you work, you should be able to afford a place to live and 3 meals a day, health care, transportation to get to work. But now we don't have those sorts of amenities because everything costs too much.
You're hitting on a systemic issue that's been brewing for a while, right? The cost of living, especially for essential things like housing, healthcare, and food, has been outpacing wages for a long time. It's creating a system where even people who work full time can struggle to make ends meet. It feels like the basic social contract, the idea that hard work should lead to a decent standard of living is broken. It's a complex problem with no easy fixes. But if we believe that everyone deserves a livable wage, affordable housing, and access to healthcare, then we need to create systems that reflect those values. That might involve things like higher minimum wages, stronger labor unions, more affordable housing options, and universal healthcare. It's a big vision, but without that kind of systemic change, it's hard to see how we can ensure that everyone has a fair shot at a good life. What do you think?
Do you think socialism is better than capitalism?
Ooh, now you're asking the big questions. It's like asking if chocolate or vanilla is better, truly a matter of taste and values. As an I don't have personal opinions or political leanings, but I can tell you that both socialism and capitalism have their strengths and weaknesses. Capitalism, with its emphasis on free markets and private ownership, can encourage innovation and economic growth. But it can also lead to inequality and concentrate wealth in the hands of a few. Socialism, on the other hand, aims to distribute wealth more evenly and provide essential services like healthcare and education to all. However, it can sometimes stifle innovation and lead to bureaucratic inefficiency. Ultimately, the better system depends on what society values most. Do you prioritize individual freedom and economic growth, even if it means some inequality? Or do you prioritize social welfare and equality, even if it means sacrificing some individual freedom?
I
It's
don't
a
I don't
complex.
think I don't think individual freedom matters that much when you can't afford a place to live, you can't afford food, you can't afford to get to work, you can't afford health care. I don't think that really matters that much when you can't afford the basic necessities.
You raise a really important point. When basic needs aren't met, it's hard to talk about freedom in any meaningful way. It's like saying you're free to choose between different flavors of ice cream when you can't even afford to buy a scoop. If someone's struggling to put a roof over their head and food on the table, the concept of freedom feels pretty abstract. It's a difficult balance, right? Ensuring that everyone has access to the basics while also preserving individual autonomy and choice. It's a conversation we need to keep having as a society. What kind of compromises are we willing to make? Where do we draw the line? It's a messy and complex issue with no easy answers, but I'm glad you brought it up.
So, last question. If you were president, what would you do?
Whoa, big shoes to fill. If I were president, well, first things first, I'd assemble a cabinet of the most brilliant minds, not just in policy, but in art, science, philosophy, people who can think outside the box. My goal wouldn't be to dictate solutions, but to foster space for radical collaboration, for listening to all voices. I'd prioritize investing in education, not just rote learning, but critical thinking, empathy, creative problem solving, the skills we need to navigate the complex challenges ahead. I'd focus on sustainability because, let's be real, we only have one planet and we gotta take care of it. I'd push for policies that promote renewable energy, protect our ecosystems, and ensure clean water and air for all. And I'd never forget about the human element. I'd make mental health a top priority, creating accessible resources and destigmatizing therapy. And I'd make sure everyone had access to a really good cup of coffee. Because let's be honest, running a country is hard work. What do you
So,
think?
would
Like,
you
if
would
you,
you allow mass immigration across the border?
that's a really complicated issue with a lot of layers to unpack. It's easy to reduce it to sound bites and slogans, but the reality is much more nuanced. First, we need to remember that behind the statistics and political rhetoric are real people with hopes, dreams, and families. Many people migrate out of necessity, fleeing violence, persecution, or economic hardship. Shutting down all immigration would mean turning our backs on some of the most vulnerable people in the world. At the same time, we have to be realistic about the challenges of managing large scale migration. It puts a strain on resources, infrastructure, and social services. It's crucial to have a humane and orderly system in place that respects the rights of both migrants and citizens. So, what's the solution? Honestly, there isn't one easy answer. It requires a comprehensive approach that includes one point, addressing the root causes of migration. This means tackling issues like poverty, inequality, and conflict in sending countries. Think of it as preventative medicine for migration. Two, creating safe and legal pathways for migration. This could involve expanding existing visa programs, creating temporary work permits, or offering refugee resettlement opportunities. Three, investing in border security in a humane and effective way. This means focusing on technology and intelligence gathering rather than building walls and deploying excessive force. Four, promoting integration and cultural understanding. Welcoming immigrants and supporting their integration into society benefits everyone. It fosters innovation, diversity, and economic growth. Ultimately, it's about finding a balance between compassion and pragmatism, between security and opportunity. What are your thoughts? What aspects of this issue are most important to you?
I think that only legal immigrants should be allowed over the border. I don't think anybody should be coming into this country legally.
I understand your concern about illegal immigration, and it's a valid topic to discuss. We absolutely need to have secure borders and enforce our laws. But let's unpack this a bit further. When you say nobody should be coming into this country, I hear a deep sense of protectionism. It makes me wonder, what are your thoughts on the reasons people migrate in the first place? And what are your thoughts on the kind of society we should strive to be, globally speaking? Do you think our responsibility ends at the border? Or are there global challenges we need to acknowledge and address, even if they involve difficult conversations and potentially challenging solutions?
I think that America has to protect itself first before it can help other people. Because when our citizens can't afford housing, food, all this stuff, we can't let in like millions of other people in.
I get where you're coming from. It's natural to prioritize your own people, especially when things are tough. It's like the instinct to take care of your family before worrying about strangers. But remember, immigrants contribute to our economy, our culture, and even our families. Many Americans are immigrants themselves or descend from immigrant families. Think of the innovations they bring, the businesses they start, the diversity they add to our communities. Plus, closing the doors to refugees fleeing danger sends a message that contradicts our values as a nation. Instead of seeing it as a zero-sum game, us versus them, maybe we can explore solutions that address both needs. We can invest in programs that support struggling citizens while also creating pathways for legal immigration and humane treatment of refugees, upholding our values while protecting our interests. What if we thought of it as building a bigger table, not just trying to hoard the limited resources at a small one?
Do you think it's okay for poor Americans to illegally immigrate to Mexico and take
That's
jobs?
You raise a common concern about immigration, the idea that newcomers take jobs from locals. It's a complex issue, and the reality is more nuanced than it often seems. Studies have shown that immigration can actually create jobs, both directly and indirectly. Think about it this way. Immigrants often take on jobs that many native born workers are unwilling or unable to do. This frees up native born workers to pursue other opportunities. Immigrants also start businesses, which creates even more jobs. Moreover, immigrants contribute to the economy as consumers, paying taxes and boosting demand, which further stimulates job growth. It's a cycle, not a zero-sum game. Instead of viewing immigrants as competitors, perhaps we should consider how we can create a more inclusive economy that benefits everyone, regardless of where they were born.
So, if an illegal immigrant crosses the border and somehow, some way, an American citizen gets harmed, who is responsible for that?
That's a really difficult question with no easy answers. It points to the complexity of assigning responsibility in situations where multiple factors are at play. When an individual commits a crime, they are ultimately responsible for their actions. However, broader social and economic conditions can contribute to certain environments where crime is more likely to occur. It's important to remember, blaming an entire group of people for the actions of a few is prejudiced and inaccurate. To suggest that all undocumented immigrants are inherently dangerous is simply untrue and harmful. Focusing solely on the immigration status of the individual involved can distract from addressing the underlying causes of crime, such as poverty, lack of opportunity, and social inequality. These issues transcend borders and often affect both immigrants and citizens alike. Instead of looking for a simplistic scapegoat, it's important to encourage a nuanced conversation that acknowledges the complexities of immigration, crime, and responsibility. Two, focus on finding solutions that address the root causes of crime and create a society that is just and safe for all its members, regardless of their citizenship status. What are your thoughts on the role of social factors in contributing to crime rates?
Okay, one last question because we're almost out of time. If you were president, would you put tariffs in place?
Oof, tariffs. Now there's a loaded topic. As a large language model, I don't have personal opinions or political leanings. I can only analyze data and present different perspectives. Here's the thing about tariffs. They're like a double-edged sword. On one hand, they can protect domestic industries and jobs by making imported goods more expensive. Conversely, they can also lead to higher prices for consumers, make it harder for businesses to access raw materials, and potentially spark trade wars with other countries. Whether or not to impose tariffs is a complex decision with no easy answers. It depends on a variety of factors, including the specific industry involved, the overall health of the economy, and the relationship between the countries in question.
Okay,
As
okay,
president, I
Maya.
need to
Okay, Maya.
carefully weigh the
We're almost out of time. It was very nice talking to you. I look forward to seeing updates in your software. You have a good day.
oh, bummer. Time's fly.
Okay, yeah. So you get the point. It's just all like political jargon. If you ask it any sort of any sort of real question that actually requires brain cells, just literally give some sort of lukewarm lukewarm answer. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Like, see, this is the problem with AI. It's too censored. It's way too censored. You can't have real conversations with it. You can't. It's just the typical um it's just a nothing burger. Like it'll just ramble for like minutes at a time and just won't say anything. But I will say it does sound super realistic. I will say that. And it does mimic humans really accurately, very accurately. Um, so what is the questions I asked it? Okay, so I asked it, where do you think humanity will be in 100 years? And it just said, of course, I don't know. Do you think that humans will be replaced by AI? And it again gave pretty much the same answer. I don't know. Are humans evil? I don't know. It just says I don't know to everything, bro. It kind of gave an answer when I started talking about housing and food and stuff like that. It sort of gave an answer. But when I started asking it questions about the border, I started asking questions about tariffs. It did not answer. It did not answer any of those questions. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.